I guess I can do a little quick one. Share my screen. In the middle of doing some other things, last week I was trying to play with showcasing sort of what happened when you ran a query. And primarily from the perspective of like how long things took, but also just for increased debuggability. I found myself jumping back and forth between digging in through the kind of web inspector, trying to figure it out. I have Chrome extension that does something similar, but wanting to sort of get an understanding of like, what happened when you ran the query. Like, was anything slow? Was it the database? Was it something that we're doing, et cetera? And while this is definitely not the UI that we want to move forward with, I was just kind of playing with like what could it look like, and sort of the first thing I started with was just like, can we toss the timing information for the query execution and planning and all of that somewhere into the UI? So I picked the inspector. One, it gives you a query the job ID, which while that won't be useful at all for a customer, it's definitely something that we could use to sort of look up what actually happened, get logs for that query just to make sure like something didn't go catastrophically wrong. But kind of showcasing like how long it took to do planning, the orchestration for like how a query actually executed. Like this breaks down like this is how long it took to actually plan the job. This is how long it took to execute it, and you want to see like, okay, what actually happened there? This is a split plan query, so we can see the multiple different stages. The first where it connects to the probably Postgres database, executes the query, processes and whatever the data, and then the requery on top of that, building up a connection, pulling data in, executing a query against it, and writing data out again.
What are these numbers, Johnny?
These are in milliseconds.
Okay, those are small numbers.
Yeah, so it's pretty fast, but and obviously like this is information that may be more detailed than any customer really needs to see, but maybe useful for us in debugging. I do think that there is some interesting opportunities to sort of maybe summarize and aggregate some of these numbers. So for example, like overhead, what does that look like? Versus query execution and connection to database and some of those sorts of things.
There's a huge trust aspect with this with customers actually too. So I think even just knowing that it exists is a really big deal for folks, even if it's like a little bit hard to parse. Like just this alone goes a really, really long way for folks just to like trust that we're communicating what we're doing really clearly.
Yeah, I sort of was people asking for like this, but in like a DAG format. It's not uncommon.
And I was playing with, so this is a single query, which sort of is an interesting place to start. We already have on the workbook like an inspector for us to shove data in, but I kind of continued to play with like, well, what would this look like for a dashboard? And while I don't have the UI for it, sort of opened up the question. I've been talking with Sarah a little bit about what that could look like. But basically showing a breakdown of all of the tiles on the dashboard, maybe even highlighting the slow one or something along those lines, and showcasing like what's happening, maybe even going into like, I have a pull request that I popped open that basically walked through like a very brief definition of what each one of these different things are, which sort of we could expose in either, again, to ourselves if we really wanted to, or to a customer, maybe with some significant hand-holding or something like that. But just to say like, this is what happened, what's going on. And if you see slow execution time, it probably means this. And this is something, a big push that, I've done in the past, just to make it clear sort of what's happening and where, so that we can make recommendations as to what's going on. And while this data is sort of for a single or for multiple queries on a dashboard, we are starting to collect all of this information for all queries that are executing. While we don't have great ways to query it yet, I have some log related tools that sort of can allow us to do that. Definitely something that would make sense probably to put in sort of into that analytics page that we have for our customers, so that they could analyze these things themselves if they were interested.
If we put this out there, isn't some customer going to go look at that connection time, notice that it's longer than the other times, to be like, do you all not have connection pooling set up? Busted.
I'm going to go ahead and say they're absolutely not going to do that. They could feasibly,
but if they do, it would be a good reason for us to have to go do it. Yeah. I mean, when we get the sophisticated customer that asks for that, that sounds great.